morning, everyone. Welcoming everyone to webinar on Unveiling an Opportunity of 5 Gigawatts of Solar PV in Sri Lanka by 2030. I would be quickly running you all through the agenda for today. We have two techno-commercial presentations, one by Longi Solar and one by Gopi. Followed by that, we have two sessions of panel discussion by leaders of solar industry. Now I would like to invite Mr. Vipul Gulati, who is the CEO of First View Media Ventures Private Limited, Solar Quarter, to address the welcome speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta. So I think it's very great to be a part of this interesting session. I'm joined by a lot of panelists who otherwise, we would be in a position to meet them one-to-one or face-to-face in Colombo. So as you all know, I think we every year we have an event, Sri Lanka Solar Week, which we do in partnership with the SIEA, which is the Sri Lanka Industry Association. Nonetheless, I think we're adapting to the kind of times we are currently living in. So, with this, I think the whole idea of this, webinar, why we've decided to have a dedicated series running for emerging solar markets is because we realized that over the next 5 years, some of the growing markets, in the ASEAN region or Latin America or Africa, is going to constitute to more than about 200 gigawatt of installations. And thus the series Emerging Solar Markets is created, in which Sri Lanka is our first market, which we've decided to have a very dedicated session. I am thankful to a lot of senior colleagues and professionals who are joining us from Colombo. For those of you who do not know us, from my friends from Sri Lanka who are joining us, Solar Quarter is one of Asia's biggest clean energy media, with our presence in events, conferences, publishing, market research. We're also launching a First View Connect, where some of the global players can interact with the communities in Sri Lanka and other Asian countries. So with this, I think I look forward to an exciting 2-hour session where Sri Lanka, which is such a unique market, and we've already seen a lot of financing coming in from ADB in this particular market. So I think I'm going to be all ears for this next 2 hours while I hear some of the experts talking about this market. So welcoming you all once again, and that's it from my side. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, proceeding ahead with the opening remarks by Mr. Damita Kumarasinghe, who is the Director General, Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. And at the outset, I thank you all for inviting me for this opening remarks. And I'm very happy to be with you during this webinar. Now, since this forum or the webinar is basically on the solar development for the future in Sri Lanka, but I will not touch specifically on solar, but just to give you some thinking of mine on the development of the electricity sector and the role of solar and other renewable resources in future. Now, first, past is not a good reflection of the future, especially during technology transitions. Now, we can see the telecom sector, especially we are very familiar with the Sri Lankan situation, and India is also the same, where we remember a couple of decades ago, it was fixed line business, and it is completely changed into a mobile business within a period of decade or so. That was a big, huge transition in the telecom sector. And on the business side also, we are seeing some changes in the business concepts. Now, earlier we were used to deal with voice mainly in the telecom. Now we are dealing mostly with data. So the business concept has changed, the technology has changed, the industry has changed, and became a hugely competitive as well as very much value-added sector. And what happened to telecom a couple of decades ago, we are seeing right now in the power sector. A similar transition is happening in front of our eyes in the power sector, especially the generation and also transmission. The concepts of firm energy, the base loads, ancillary services, storage, all those concepts have been challenged technically as well as conceptually. So it is a rapid transition that we are currently in the energy sector. So we have to look at the future in the eyes of that transition. So past may not be a good reflection of the future of the electricity sector, uh, uh, in my opinion. Now, recently we have seen this transition. In January, we heard that in Qatar there was a tender where the solar price was very, very low, about $0.015 a kilowatt hour for 800 megawatts of solar, which we have not seen before. And in February, we have seen the world largest renewable storage tender coming up in India, 1.2 gigawatts. So these are happening pretty quickly. And this month, a couple of days ago, we saw in India that Adani Group is developing 8 gigawatts of solar projects. 8 gigawatts, that's huge. So coming up in India. And a couple of months ago, we have seen Indian Railway Minister Piyush Goyal stating that 100% of their railways would be 100% on electricity by 2024. So these are the changes that are happening in this region and in the world. And that transition is happening pretty fast. Month on month, the development is huge. And also, we saw within this year that the Victorian distributors came up with the idea of 95% of the households to be on rooftop solar. And also in America, one of the biggest and most famous investors, Warren Buffett, has started investing heavily on renewable energy. So these are the changes that are happening in the world very, very quickly, and that would be the future. So that's why I said past may not be a good reflection of the future in the energy sector. And also, if you come back to Sri Lanka, the president Gotabaya Rajapaksa has declared that 80% of the energy would be from renewable energy by 2030. A huge task, but the direction is clear, and direction is in line with the developments that are happening all over the world. So as a country, Sri Lanka, I expect and I sincerely hope would follow that path and the policy and achieve the target set by the government. And the other thing is, if you look at the electricity of the Sri Lanka, we have about 18,000 gigawatt hours at present, the demand. Very small compared to India or any other big country in the region. But we expect to go to about 31,000 gigawatt hours by 2030, about 70% increase during a period of decade. And also in the same time, the peak demand would grow from about 3,000 megawatts in 2020 to 5,000 megawatts in 2030. And there is a very significant change is expected in the load curve, where the day demand exceeds the night demand by around 2026, 2027. So that's a pretty interesting change in the load pattern of Sri Lanka, which we expect. And that load pattern itself provides certain opportunities for technologies like solar to come in and coming big time. And the prices of these technologies the renewable technologies are coming down pretty fast, like the mobile prices that we experienced over the last decade or so. The prices are coming down, the technology is changing, and also the business models and the concepts are changing pretty fast. So we have to be in line with those changes in future. So if you look at 2020-2030 time horizon, Sri Lanka needs to develop a lot of renewable energy. As per the policy, it is a very high target, I would say. But but the direction is very clear, and we need to develop that. That is the policy direction. And the transition of the business models and the transition of the technologies are very clear, that we need to be in line with those if we are to produce low cost, affordable energy. And on the other hand, I would touch upon the energy security aspect as well, because that is very, very important for a country. And also, I would like to say energy security is not same as energy self-sufficiency. Sometimes these two terms are mixed up. So energy self-sufficiency is one thing, and the energy security is different to that. And also, energy security is not necessarily the diversification of resources. Diversification of resources sometimes can make the sector riskier. It's not portfolio management theory that can be applied to this energy security issue. And there are 4 aspects. I think that's where the renewable energy is very, very important. One is the availability of the resources. I hope during the panel discussions, the relevant experts will take this subject up, where the availability of renewables to serve the requirements in future, especially in Sri Lanka, since we are focusing this discussion on Sri Lanka. Then the second aspect is the affordability issue. So whether the energy is affordable to the people. There's no point in having certain form of energy where people cannot afford. Then it is not, it cannot be used by people if it is not affordable. So we have to have affordable energy. That's where the ever falling prices in the renewable energy sector is very much encouraging and interesting. And the other important thing is the accessibility issue, where this is very important, where whether we can access, even if it is available, whether we can access. For example, there can be some resources available in other countries, but what will happen if we can't access them geopolitically, technically, or any other way? So accessibility is an issue here. So that's where the renewables are very, very come in very, very handy. And the fifth one is acceptability. Acceptability is a key issue, because some of the technologies may not be acceptable to the communities or to the countries or to certain groups of people. So if that is the case, then development of those resources will be very, very difficult. And if we base our thinking, our planning on those resources, then we would most probably end up with energy security issues. So with that note, I think I have consumed the amount of time given to me, and I think with those aspects of energy security and the developments that are happening around the world in technology and in the business models, the renewable energy will of course provide a pretty good solution in terms of availability and the affordability of the resources. I thank again for the organizers, and also expect there would be some fruitful discussions on this during the course of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We are very glad to have you. Before we proceed ahead with the techno-commercial presentation, I will be quickly launching few polls. What part of solar industry do you work within? Five seconds, I'm closing the poll now. As you all can see, we have a mixed category of participation today. Moving on to the next poll. Are you optimistic about installation of 5 gigawatts of solar PV by 2030? Five seconds, I'm closing the poll now. That's a positive note, 64% agree to it. Thank you very much. I'm ending the polls. Moving ahead, we have a techno-commercial presentation by Mr. Siddharth Ravindran, AGM Business Development, India and Sri Lanka, LANKA Solar. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. Hold on.
Yes, sir.
So is it visible to you?
Yes, sir, very much. Over to you.
So thanks for the introduction and queuing me in, Sangeeta. So a very good morning, everyone. So before I begin, I'd like to thank Solar Quarter for bringing together delegates from across borders and organizing this session. So it's certainly a pleasure to be presenting in front of this wonderful audience. So going ahead with the presentation, I'm sure most of you must be already aware of the brand Longi. Just to start with a little background, Longi was incorporated in the year 2000, and in the early days was into manufacturing of silicon ingots. We started off with manufacturing monocrystalline wafers when the market share of mono was just about 2%. Today, after two decades of vertical growth, our team stands 40,000 strong, contributing to a turnover of more than $4.5 billion with a net bottom line of close to 800 million. But what we're really proud of to share with you is that more than 5% of this revenue is invested in R&D. Our cumulative investment being more than $1 billion, which truly reflects on our commitment to innovation. So this, in fact, makes us the largest spender in R&D among pure play PV companies. And as you can see, we are most aptly awarded with multiple recognitions, including being a part of the Forbes 2020 Global Top 2000 Public Companies. Moving on. So in terms of market share, we hold more than 40% of the total mono wafer supply globally, which without a doubt makes us the largest manufacturer. So you could most certainly believe that 1 in 2 mono wafers that are used in the industry are from us, which itself is a significant achievement. Moreover, we've supplied more than 9 gigawatt of cells and modules last year alone, while we've cumulatively crossed 8 gigawatt of bifacial module supplies. What you see here on your screen is in fact an old number. We currently have gone past 8 gigawatt. So as you can see, we are a truly vertically integrated company with wafers, cells, and modules, all being manufactured under one single umbrella. So we topped the latest Bloomberg's list of Tier 1 manufacturers, where we hold a capacity of more than 20 gigawatt. To be precise, we stood at 22 gigawatt last month, and with a very recent acquisition in Vietnam, our capacity currently stands at 25 gigawatt. And in terms of financial strength, we hold the highest Altman Z-score of 3.27 among PV manufacturers. The threshold value being about 2.99. So this basically is a measure of safety from bankruptcy. So, and we've in fact topped this rating for many quarters, or in fact many years in a row now consecutively, which reflects on our sustainable growth. So because we firmly believe that the best warranty that we could offer as a PV module manufacturer to our clients is by staying strong financially. So just to take you through a brief timeline, you can see that LONGi has been committed to monocrystalline technology since day one. And while we got listed in 2007, we continued to push through barriers and pioneered in many technological advancements, such as the diamond wire slicing technology and the CZ ingot pulling process. So we basically revolutionized the production process, which brought down the cost of mono wafers significantly. Eventually, we became the world's #1 mono wafer supplier by 2014. And we then, and even now, still strongly believe that mono technology would be the way of the future. And that in the next 1 or 2 years, we would see at least 50 to 60% of the total supply being from mono. And by 2015, we started manufacturing our own cells and panels. Obviously, we were the largest monocrystalline module manufacturer at that point, even though our production capacity was just about 3 gigawatt. And today we stand at 25, like I told you. By 2018, however, we became the world's most valuable PV manufacturer with a market capitalization of over 18 billion US dollars, which again is the largest among PV companies. Not to mention, we are also now part of the prestigious RE100 club, where we join a small but a prestigious list of about 235 companies like Apple, Microsoft, Infosys, and even Tata Motors. So as a part of this, we've pledged to satisfy 100% of our electricity demand from renewable sources by the year 2050. So as far as reach is concerned, we are truly a global company with offices and representatives across the globe. As you can see, our manufacturing base is currently spread across 11 locations, with 9 in China and 2 in Malaysia. Moving on, so coming to our product portfolio, we've grown from the HIMO 1 to now the HIMO 4 with a wattage of upwards of 400 watt. The HIMO X, however, that you see here had more focus on aesthetics along with performance, of course. So it was more popular in countries like Japan, Singapore, and even Hong Kong. Again, our most recent, the HIMO 4, our most recent is the HIMO 4, and we will be soon launching our HIMO 5 series of modules, which provides you a wattage in the range upwards of 500 watt. I'm sorry. So in fact, the launch for the HIMO 5 is scheduled for next week. So like I said, the HIMO 4 is our best product yet in terms of wattage and LCOE. We have standardized the M6 wafer size, and with the configuration of 6 bus bar and 9 bus bar, we've achieved module efficiencies of over 20%. So the HIMO 4 is in fact available as a bifacial panel too, and you'd be surprised to know today that the price delta between a monofacial and a bifacial is just about a dollar cent. So typically, we recommend that the bifacial modules be installed at a 1 meter height to make maximum use of the albedo. In India, we've in fact got companies like Infosys and Bosch who've already installed large-scale rooftops with our bifacial modules, and they've been getting fantastic results. So in both these sites, however, I mean, Infosys and Bosch, they've ensured to paint their roofs white to get the maximum albedo possible. And as you can see here, the bifacial gain is the highest with white reflective surfaces. So in fact, we also have a pilot plant in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India, which was tested by TUV. And in their observations, we've seen that the bifacial gains from our module has peaked at 19.2%, which very much supports our claim here. So by paying just an additional cent for a bifacial module, which is approximately just about 5 or 6% extra cost-wise, you could expect a gain of more than 15% easily. So the value proposition of a bifacial module in terms of LCOE2 is definitely more attractive compared to the monofacial at the moment. Moving on. Quality-wise, today we offer the best degradation rate in the market. Our first-year degradation is less than 2%, which itself is significantly lesser than the industry average, which is about 2.5 to 3%. Again, we offer an industry-best degradation rate for the subsequent years as well, that is after the first year, with less than 0.55% for monofacial and less than 0.45% for bifacial. So honestly, over the years that we've been supplying modules, we can very confidently say that we haven't got a single warranty or replacement claim related to performance. And while we claim 0.55% and 0.45%, our observed rates of decay, as you can see here, have been only around 0.3 or 0.4%. So as you can see, all that we claim are very well supported by recognition from top testing agencies like PV Tech, PV Magazine, and DNVGL, and even TUV. These are top testing and rating agencies, and we have somehow almost always found our spot at the top of the ratings on a very consistent basis. So as I mentioned earlier, we invest extensively in R&D, and we're thankful to collaborate in our research with companies like Huawei, 3M, and DuPont. And we also work with the University of New South Wales, who is a pioneer in PV research, particularly in monoperk research. And we also work with other prestigious institutes, as you can see, like CEI, to continuously enable us for breakthroughs in this technology. So, like I said, the production capacity currently stands at about 65 gigawatt in wafers and 25 gigawatt in panels. Despite the COVID situation and everything, today we are still on track to achieve our target of 75 gigawatt wafers and 30 gigawatt module manufacturing capacity by the end of this year. So this would most certainly help us retain the #1 position in the market yet again. So once again, like I said, we are part of the prestigious RE100 Club. In fact, our president, Mr. Lee, was invited to deliver a keynote address at the recently held COP21 summit in Paris, where he launched the Solar for Solar program. While the target to go 100% renewable by the year 2050, he pledged to achieve it by the year 2038 itself. With over 11 factories currently under our belt and more to come, we believe this indeed is a significant step towards a very sustainable future. So with that, I leave you with a few beautiful images from our various projects. So that's about it, I guess. So thank you, everyone, for being extremely patient listeners through this entire presentation. Thanks again. Appreciate it. Thanks, Sangeeta. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Siddharth. Now, moving ahead, I would be quickly launching 2 polls back-to-back. What needs to be done by the government in Sri Lanka to speed up installations in the country? I'm closing the poll, 5 seconds to go. "67% of audience agree with all of the above points: assistance in land clearance, incentives and subsidy, tariff link to, and making finance available at low interest rate." Thank you very much. I'll just launch a next poll quickly. Do you foresee solar plus storage will increase the adoption of solar in Sri Lanka? I'm closing the poll now. 85% of audience agree. Before we proceed ahead, I would like to thank the government bodies, especially Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, Ministry of Power Renewable Energy, Solar Industries Association for your continuous support, especially Mr. Lakmal for agreeing to be a moderator for both the sessions. With this, I would now hand over the session to Mr. Lakmal. He would be having a small presentation done from his end, and after that, we'll be proceeding ahead with the panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Sangeeta, and thanks to the Solar organizing this webinar. Can you please share this? Allow me to share the screen for this presentation.
Sure, sir.
Now, this is an extract. Can everyone see?
You can see. Can you make it full screen, please? Yes. Perfect.
This is an extract of the presentation that I have made to the expert committee that is appointed by the Ministry of Power and Energy to look into the 80% renewable target by 2030. So I'll take you through a few slides that are particularly interested in the solar section. Our target is for reaching 25% of energy in solar by 2030. And if you look at the energy split, this is the energy split that we are looking at in 31,000 gigawatt hours. We are looking at wind to be 32%, solar to be 26%, major hydro, mini hydro, and finally 20% of non-renewable based energy. And in this presence, we are looking at about 5 gigawatts of solar capacity by 2030. On the side, we are showing the split of this 5 gigawatts. We are hopeful that we will be able to get about 40% of that, which is 2 gigawatts from the rooftops. The floating and ground mounted, another 3 gigawatts. So the way to get it is, the deployability is going to be very, very fast. Rooftops, basically 4 to 6 months. And small scale ground mounted 12 to 18 months, provided that we can get this one-stop shop that we all have been talking about for some time to get the approvals. And the large scale floating, it's about 18 to 30 months. So it's very evident that this is going to be the fastest deployment of energy available compared to any other sources of energy that we have been discussing with. And many other countries have been providing various incentives to promote the solar business in the world. Say, for example, in India, some places up to 70% of the incentives were given in some states. In Australia, up to $2,500 given per household, and tax rebates and various high tariffs in USA, Europe, UK, and the entire West. In Sri Lanka, we are not asking for any of these things. All we are expecting is a level playing field. And how to get there? Now, this is very important. For this 5 gigawatts solar capacity, we are targeting 2 gigawatts of rooftop solar. We are having approximately little over 5 million rooftops. And even if we are able to convert only 20% of this with the lowest capacity of 3 kilowatts, we are looking at 3 gigawatts of power within the next 5 years. So that's the side of the rooftops. And then we are talking about the ground-mounted systems and floating systems. We do have ground-mounted barren land, scrublands capacity to accommodate just about 10% of the scrubland available. We can accommodate about 20 gigawatts of ground-mounted solar. So this is a huge lot. Basically, about say less than 10% of this can deliver the number that we are looking at, which is about 1.5 gigawatts of ground-mounted. And then in floating, you are looking at about, say, 25 large reservoirs and 30 large lagoons, covering 15% of the surface area of the large reservoirs and 10% of the 30 large lagoons will give us enough space to mount 35 gigawatts of solar. So basically what we are saying is we need only 1% of the large reservoirs and lagoons to get the 3 gigawatts target. And the economic impact, basically, and the virtues of cycle. The financial security, energy security, zero capital cost to the government, energy democratization, we call it prosumer basis, and employment generation, environmental friendly, and economic benefit. We have seen every year the rupee has been depreciating up to about 5%. As a result, the fossil fuel-based energy costs likely to go up every year. We estimate the coal cost will go up by 75 cents every year. So this is, leaving out the high volatility of coal prices in the world market. So the recent generation plan says that the coal cost is going to be about 22 rupees with all the things coming up. But this is not taking the externality costs to the calculation. So if you take the externality costs also to the calculation, it's going to be 30 plus. And energy security, of course, now this is very important. Had the COVID come in 5 months before, today we would have been having power cuts in Sri Lanka because we can only bring in raw material to our coal plants in a certain period of the time. And South Africa closed soon after the COVID-19 came, South Africa closed down. So without raw material, our plants would have been redundant and we would have been in dark. So energy security is very, very important, as Mr. Amit Kumar Singh very clearly pointed out. And 80% renewables in the grid is going to give that energy security that we require. And employment, economic benefit and employment generation, annual potential saving of billions of rupees to avoid fossil fuel purchase, fast deployment, renewable energy overall cheaper than fossil fuels already, large number of entrepreneurs and jobs created by the renewable industry. This is about 10,000 jobs right now within a span of less than 8 years and with less than 1% solar presence in the grid. Zero capital cost to the government. Now, this is also very important because whether you cost it to the job or not, it's going to be a capital cost to the taxpayers of the country. So renewable energy business and the industry is purely completely funded by the business community. And energy democratization. Now, this is very important again. We have so far created about 30,000 prosumers in the country, and it keeps growing. And our estimation is about 2 million population to become prosumers. And it's obviously environmental friendly. So these are the pluses that we are, talking about in the entire renewable energy industry, which we are projecting to be 80% by the 2030. And our focus here today, how to achieve it. And in summary, ample resources available, locations available identified, prices are lower than fossil fuel, zero cost to the environment, avoid annual forex outflow, solutions available for technical compatibility issues, fastest to deploy, rooftops basically 4 to 6 months, and the other ones also less than 18 months. Reduce, defer transmission and distribution capacity expansions. So based on this, we can lead our conversation today and the discussion today and have a fruitful 1.5 hours of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we would proceed ahead with the panel discussion. The topic would be focusing on Surya Bala Sangram, Phase 3, role of solar PV in 80% renewable strategy by 2030, Sri Lanka. Subtopics would be tender talks, what tenders would be floated in third phase of Surya Bala Sangram, a battle for solar energy program, how solar plus storage would be adopted, how Sri Lanka is planning to combat risk arising from currency depreciation in foreign investments, solar net metering, new accounting, and net plus, current state of policy and guidelines. We have a list of solar leaders with us. Ms. Dr. Akansa Rodrigo, Director General, Sri Lanka, Sustainable Energy Authority. Mr. Sulakshana Jayawardena, Director Development, Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Mr. Kushan Jayasurya, President Solar Industries and Association, and also Director of Alpha Solar. Mr. Lakmal Fernando, Secretary Solar Industries Association, who is also going to moderate the session. Mr. Ranishka Vimala Sena, Energy Specialist, ADB. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta. So let's start our discussion initially with Mr. Sulakshana Jayawardena from the Ministry of Power and Energy. Ms. Jayawardena, we have been, having this discussion for some time, and I think it is time for us to discuss in public what are the things that we need to do to get this 80% renewable energy target. And my first point to you is, Ministry of Policy Planning has announced the 80% renewable target by 2030 in December 2019. What steps the Ministry of Power and Energy has taken to take this forward and bring to the policy to the level of execution?
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this important and timely webinar about solar development of Sri Lanka. So, Mr. Lakmal, I would like to thank you also to highlight the policy elements in terms of achieving policy objectives, what can be done by the ministry. So, I would like to say this, that there is no argument about solar development, because it is a precious available resource that we can use for generation of electricity. So as you very correctly pointed out, I mean, most of the speakers, they have stated that the policy targets of the government of Sri Lanka, that is to achieve 80% of demand or energy by 2030 from renewables, including large hydro. So Ministry of Plan Implementation has declared that the target, and also I would like to highlight the national energy policy, because that is the framework policy, I mean, which is covered the entire energy sector, not only the electricity sector. It covers certain extent, it covers petroleum and also transport. So having said that, there are three key areas that some of them already explained by Mr. Damita Kumar Singh during his keynote speech. One is energy security, the other one is energy sustainability, the other one is energy equity. There are 10 policy elements in that national energy policy. Those have been divided into these key areas. So our HE, the president, he has stated that to achieve 80%, it is also coming under, with the framework of that energy policy. So having said that, I would like to highlight some of the key features. Now, you know that probably almost all know that about the solar program which has been implemented in the country. Now we have introduced the solar rooftop systems way back. I'm talking about the grid connected solar rooftop systems way back 2009. So after that, we changed some of the features of solar rooftop systems in 2016 to enhance or to encourage more and more customers to become prosumers. So as at today, there are more than 250 megawatt of systems have been connected to the grid. A part of that, there are another 57 megawatt of utility scale solar projects. So how we can achieve this 80% target? Of course, there are certain things that we have to understand. One is potential. Of course, there is no argument about the potential. Then availability of the land for development of solar. As Mr. Lakmal indicated, the potential and the resource and also availability of land is possible. I mean, we can develop it by 2030. But there are other certain things that we have to think and we have to study. So the government has decided to appoint and already appointed a committee, expert committee, which comprises sector experts, including utility and also sustainable energy authority, and also foreign and local experts. So they are in the way of studying the matter, and they are doing certain technical studies to accommodate or achieve how we can achieve this target by 2030. And also I want to highlight solar development of the country. Now we are focusing 4 stages. One is solar rooftop system. So of course, we have targeted to achieve 200 megawatt by 2020. Already we have achieved it. Before the target year, that is in 2019, we achieved it. And another target that we have focused is to achieve another 800 megawatt by 2025. I think with this initiatives, with these encouragements, we will be able to achieve this target by 2025. And a part of that, we, as a second phase, we introduced the system that is sort of a scale of 1 megawatt scale. And we have floated, you know, that before that, I want to point it out that we, in Sri Lankan context, we are supposed to purchase electricity through tendering process, competitive process. So according to the Sri Lanka Electricity Act enacted in 2009 and subsequent amendment introduced in 2013, transmission licenses should follow this tendering process. So with this initiative, tendering process, we were able to bring down the cost significantly. And now under the 1 megawatt projects, we floated tenders for 60 megawatt and also 90 megawatt. And very recently, another tender is on, that is 150 megawatt throughout the country. A part of that, there is another phase that is called 10 megawatt phase. And that is basically we floated 2 tenders, and we are planning to float another couple of tenders within this year to provide the opportunity for developers or the investors to do these kind of development or the investments. So a part of that, now we are focusing to develop large scale solar projects, basically 100 megawatt of scale, because some of the studies, I think DG will share some of the information about the large scale projects. And basically we are focusing to float the tenders for 100 megawatt of scale projects. These are the strategies, so initiatives that we have implemented during these years. But apart of that, some of them are raised about the floating solar. Of course, now we are focusing floating solar projects because of the availability of land. You know that in Sri Lankan context, the land is very precious and expensive, and also those lands are cultivatable lands. So we have to think about the food security, energy security, and all other aspects when we do anything. So now we focus the floating solar and also solar storage projects, and these are sort of studies level, and definitely we have to move with the evolving technology in terms of renewable energy development. So these are possible targets, and we can achievable those things. Policies are defined or formulated to achieve these targets in order to achieve energy security, energy sustainability, and also energy equity. And apart of that, we have to think about the infrastructure development, because when it comes to the solar, of course, load centers are somewhere else, and the potential sites are somewhere else. So there should be a network to connect those two places. So we have to think about that, and we have to invest funds to develop infrastructure facilities. So these are the key areas that we have to think. And technically, of course, these things are possible because solutions are there, engineers are there, and technocrats are there. So we can give solutions if something, technically difficult to implement. So we can resolve those kind of things, though we small, the comparatively small island and comparatively small system, we have not connected to the neighboring countries. Now we are focusing to connect India. There are some initiatives, but still those have not been finalized yet. So at the outset, I have to say this kind of, the background as a first panel member. So I think later we can discuss further about the implementation and what are the policies that we are going to do. Even with the expert committee findings, there will be some sort of modification of strategies, device, how we can go further and way forward of this achievement of this policy targets, 80% renewable energy by 2030.
Mr. I have a little question there. Now
yeah.
We are very, very thankful that the ministry has appointed an independent expert committee to look into this 80% renewable energy target by 2030. But my question is, now we announced it in the level of the government policy planning level in December, and it took us nearly 6 months for us to start appointing a committee. Now, how long are we going to have? What is the timeline for this committee? Is there any particular set timeline for this committee to come out with their report? And because we are looking at a 5-year span, already we are at 4.5 years. What is your guesstimation about the timelines of this expert committee?
Of course, the committee was appointed 3rd week of May. So the timeline given for them to complete the study and submit their recommendation or findings within 3 months period. But we are very much optimistic to get the report within 1 month. But the experts, they have to do certain technical studies. That's why they need that kind of time duration to complete their task.
So ideally, we are looking at 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months period.
Right. One more little question to you, Mr. Javadana. Now, throughout we have seen the CEB's methodology in BPS for non-renewable energy based projects, the cost plus margin system. Now, this has been there for a long period. So whether you generate the energy or not, a certain percentage of profit is ensured for the investors for non-renewable energy-based projects. And this has been seen, as high as LKR return of 25%, and in terms of USD returns, about say over 15%. For example, in Sampur, it's about 18% USD return. But always the CEB and the ministry is putting pressure on renewable energy to further pressurize its bottom lines, while the cost of renewable energy is already the lowest in the energy mix and giving lowest return to equity to the local entrepreneurs, who is supporting the capital account by way of introducing power-related forex drain by reducing. Is there any way, that we can either bring this to equal terms or give some kind of, different energy injection to renewable energy sector?
Yeah, in fact, now if you consider about the systems, I mean, energy systems, there are three kind of power plants, like grid forming and grid following and grid feeding. Now, renewables coming under the grid feeding type of power plants. Now you talk about the conventional type of thermal power plant. Those are in sort of grid following type of power plant. But very correctly you pointed out that we can't compare, because the existing system for grid following power plants, there are two components: capacity charge and energy charge. Unlike the renewables, because there is no capacity charge for context. So we know that if we can introduce tariff system, because previously we had a tariff systems which is called cost-based technology-specific tariff. But there are certain power plants, they have already signed power purchase agreements under that methodology. But now, very recently, we introduced a tendering process without this US dollars denominated tariff. But I think in future, with the implementation of large scale projects, we have to introduce this kind of parameters to make investors, to make them more comfort. I mean, to make investments for this kind of development. So definitely this kind of initiatives, this kind of changes will be introduced in future tenders.
So are you referring to say that we are going to bring in capacity charge for renewable energy also, or going to do away with the capacity charge for non-fossil fuel based energy sectors?
No, Mr. Lakmal, as I told you, these renewables, like the power plants, like a grid feeding. So whatever the energy generate from the renewable energy, we will get it. I mean, the utility will get it. Now, unlike the conventional type power plants, so if possible, I mean, we have to think about that with the large scale power plants, and if there is a curtailment provisions, we have to introduce this kind of parameters or the modification to the PPA, because we know that sometimes renewable energy, they can't make some projects bankable, because bankers, they have their own perceptions over renewable energy projects, and there are certain difficulties to get financing for this kind of projects. But we have to, I mean, we are not moving with same aspect, same mechanism, same technology with this kind of projects. Later, gradually we can introduce certain changes, make enabling the investors to do their investments.
Thank you, Mr. Javadhan. Thank you. Dr. Rodrigo, can you please unmute your microphone?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Doctor. To start up with, now, in your capacity as the regulator of the renewable energy sector in Sri Lanka, I believe you have worked out the numbers and available to reach the 80% renewable goal by 2030 in terms of wind, mini hydro, solar, and biomass. Can can you please tell the forum a little bit about the studies that you have done for this 80% renewable energy target, Doctor?
Yeah, actually, this 80% renewable target was set out in the President's Manifesto, and after that, we have worked on about the resource availability assessments. So, actually, in terms of the Sustainable Energy Authority, we are the responsible agency for the renewable energy, the resource development. So that in terms of the resources, of course, there is no doubt about the capacity availability for the solar as well as the wind. So that there are enough capacity, even more than 80%. Capacities are available for the both solar and wind. Of course, there will not be enough capacity for the biomass. So that, but in terms of the solar and wind, we have enough capacity in Sri Lanka. I think you have shared one of my slides, which I have done in the previous the webinar. So that as I shown there, so we have, even if we utilize the something like 1% scrub lands, not the entire lands, the scrub lands and the barren lands, even we can achieve that the requirement in terms of the solar. Similarly, even for the wind also, we have the enough capacity, and now we are targeting on the offshore wind as well. There will be a World Bank supported feasibility studies after 2027 onwards. We are hoping to have the offshore wind as well, so that in terms of the renewable energy, there are enough capacity in Sri Lanka where we can achieve not only the 80%, even 100%, because the mission or the vision is, as per the energy, the policy and strategies which was published in 2019, we have to go for the carbon neutral energy sector, entire energy sector, by 2050. So that we are the heading to that target. So that this is the in-between milestone where we have, I can confirm that we have enough the resource availability in Sri Lanka, but we have to look at whether there are any barriers, how long will it take to implement these type of projects. That's why there is a expert committee appointed by the ministry to look at that one and come up with the tangible and workable plan to achieve these targets. So that is the going on. So because earlier, when you look at earlier the policies, they were not that type of the target, 80% kind of target in the earlier policies. Well, that was published in from the January onwards. So that we are working on that one. I can confirm that in terms of the Sustainable Energy Authority, so that there are enough capacity for both solar and wind, even go more than 80%.
Thank you, Doctor. And also, I have seen this morning in a public forum that the chairman of CB has said that, you know, they are going to introduce 150 megawatt tenders every 6 months, if I'm not wrong. And do you think this kind of, 150 megawatt tenders, also he had mentioned that they are going to introduce further 10 megawatts into 4 or 5 units also in the near future. But in order for us to achieve this approximately 5 gigawatts of solar capacity in the grid by 2030, don't you think that we have to accelerate this pace and have at least 150 megawatt tender coming in every 2 months to cater to this requirement? As the last 2 tenders that we all have witnessed, 60 megawatts and 90 megawatts that's been floated, still no more than 20-30 megawatts being connected, even having passed for more than 2 years. So in order for us to accelerate, what is your the approach to get this off the ground and get this 6 gigawatts of power into the grid?
Thanks for highlighting that the question. When you look at this, the solar or the renewable energy development, especially in the solar, so we started this the grid connected solar the program in way back in 2009 with the solar net metering system. But till 2016, we could achieve only about 3 megawatt. But after introducing this Suryabala Sangramya from 2016 to 2020, we could achieve more than 270 with the introduction of this Net Plus and Net Accounting program. So that you can see from the 2009 to 2016, we had only 3 megawatts. And from 2016 to 2020, so we could achieve to the 270 megawatts. And in the future, because at that time there were only that type of the rooftop programs, there were no any the tendering or anything. But from the 2018 onwards, the CEB floated tenders, and then the 1 mega, these type of 1 megawatt or what we call as a medium term tenders, so that they are continuing. So that, but in order to achieve this the large scale development, rooftop development, so what I believe is that is not enough. So that you have to go for the large scale projects. That's why we have already identified that the several large scale projects like the Punarin, Siembalanduwa, the Valika, and a few other locations, including the floating solar. Even Hambantota, we are looking for 100 megawatt. The Valikanda, we are looking for 100 megawatt, and floating solar, we are looking for 700 megawatt. Likewise, there'll be the bigger scale project, that is the large scale project. So that of course we have to go for this these three aspects: the small scale rooftops, and the medium scale 1 megawatt, and the 10 megawatt or lesser than 10 megawatt, as well as the large scale 100 or even more than 100 megawatt, the large scale project. Then only, because that should be a mix of those three. So that we cannot say that we can achieve this target only by rooftop, or only by 1 megawatt, or only by the bigger scale. We have to go these three schemes in parallel. Then only we can achieve most economical the power sector, because we have to look at the transmission grid capacities and the other technical limitations, because those type of things. So that what I believe is, my personal view is, so we should not only target on one thing. We have to look at all three schemes.
Very well accepted, Doctor. Very well accepted. Doctor, you came out with something about the grid capacity and the availability. I think the world over, the solar has become, especially the rooftop solar, has become a supportive role to the grid, to minimize the grid expansions and grid capacities. So, don't you think by way of expanding our rooftop presence, it will help the CEB, the utility, to minimize their capital expenditure costs and roll out in a more productive manner?
Yes, of course. When you look at the rooftop solar PV connection, of course, you don't need the bigger transmission network or expansion, your distribution network the expansion. So that in terms of the CEBs, the capital cost for the transmission and the distribution network, so that is the additional benefit. At the same time, we have to accept that there is when you look at any transmission and the distribution network, they have the hosting capacity. So that when we are connecting this the rooftop solar, we have to look at whether we are exceeding the hosting capacity. So that we have to manage that by looking at those technical limitations. At the same time, I have to mention you that we are now in the last stage of publishing the energy storage, the standard and the regulation, where then in the future we can utilize battery storage with the rooftop solar, which will also expand the absorption of the solar PV to the network. So, and also the people can the store energy at the daytime and use in their nighttime. Those type of options are available. So that we are just about to publish that the regulation as well as the standard. So that after that we can even more the popularize the solar PV, the rooftop systems.
That's great. One more little question. Now, no doubt the SCA is the regulator of the renewable energy sector in Sri Lanka and responsible for achieving and delivering this 80% RE target by 2030. This is equal to, New and Renewable Energy Ministry of India, who is responsible of delivering Prime Minister Modi's renewable energy plan to Indian nation. However, now over a period of time, we have seen, very subservient type of behavior towards CEB of the SCA. Why? Are there any, challenges you are faced with, or are there any problems?
Uh, Actually, I have taken over the SCA from the last year May. So frankly, I don't see that type of a restriction, but there are because we have to CB has the published generation plan. We have to because the power purchasing is a duty of the CEB. So what our role is we have to develop the renewable energy resources, and then we have to give that opportunity to the developers to develop and sell the electricity to the CEB, so that it's a CEB's responsibility. They have to decide how much of energy they can absorb. So that is the scenario, so that each the division, so all of us are government bodies, so that we have our own responsibility. CB has their own responsibility. We are performing our the responsibilities given by the act.
Let me move to Mr. Jayasuriya.
Hi, Lakmal. Morning.
Hi, good morning to you. I'm sure you have been observing the discussions that we have been going through.
Yes, yes.
1 hour, 15 minutes. And we have seen number of solar ground-mounted tenders being floated by the CB over the last few years.
Yeah.
When you look at the actual implementation, it's been evident that very few out of this 60 megawatt and 90 megawatt tenders have seen the daylight.
Yeah.
Tender process, and would it support the rapid development that we require in the market, or would it work as a barrier?
Actually, I have been personally involved in a few projects. I think the main reason for this delay is some are related to probably the clauses in the tender, which have to be sort of revisited. But in most cases, it's the land issue. I mean, for us to get a land approved during the implementation, there are approximately 12 to 15 approvals to be taken. So the Pradeshia Sabha, we call it Palat Sabha, and then the Forest Department, the Archaeology Department. And in most cases, if those departments do not work in line with each other, it can take up to months. So, and our legal system is such that if I don't like you implementing the project, if there's a minor dispute, it's a matter of going and asking the court to hold the project. So this has been the main reason why these projects are held up. Now, in order to solve this, I think we had a very positive discussion with the CEB officials also. Once these tenders are awarded, there has to be a high-profile, competent authority who will administer the process of these approvals given. For example, I think even Sustainable Energy Authority, of course, they are helping us at the moment. They can act as the authority and coordinate this whole process, because this is eventually a CEB project. CEB needs power. This is a government national importance. So I think if we have a regulated, competent authority to manage this, who can make decisions, then obviously this becomes faster. For example, there are some projects which are being held because maybe a local politician wants a huge amount of money. So these are real issues we are facing, and I think CEB is working towards resolving this. And even Sustainable Energy Authority, I think they have a committee meeting. Even if we change an approval, personally, I know they helped us within about 1 month. But if we are to achieve this target of 500 megawatts approximately per year, in looking at an aggressive target, then obviously these institutes have to be strengthened. This has to be a national project rather than a project by a private investor who is doing their power plant. In fact, we asked the officials from CEB to name this as projects by CEB, because they are competitively bidded, and these are in essence national projects. So basically, land matters, all those issues have to be to be resolved by a competent single authority. And also, I think in the tender process also, we can use more practical clauses. For example, if a person is not doing the project within the timeline or honoring or whatever, obviously his bank guarantee has to be encashed. But in some cases, we have seen because of various delays due to stakeholders, the project just gets abandoned, and the whole idea is lost because the time bar is over to encash their bonds. So evaluating this also has to be done in a very proactive manner, because the prices of these modules change, the technology changes. So in order to get the maximum benefit, I think it's important that we act fast, we evaluate fast, and we have a competent authority to help us in the implementation matter rather than just putting it on the investor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jayasuriya. I think Dr. Asanka can add something here. If you unmute your microphone, Dr. Asanka. Right. Thank you. I think what Mr. Jayasuriya said was, we should look at, some time ago we were discussing about having a one-stop shop for all the approvals. This discussion we had, about a year ago. I think it is part of Sustainable Energy Authority's mandate, if we are to get these projects up and running as fast as possible, to create this one-stop shop. Can SCA take the leadership of this creating of one-stop shop, which will enable most of these problems that the developers are facing to be minimized? Do you think it's possible, Doctor?
When you look at the Sustainable Energy Authority Act, when the act was the publishing, there was a certain type of idea to have this one-stop shop. So because even now we have, when you look at this project implementation, at the moment you have to take all the approvals from the other agencies, and that should be tabled at the what you call as a project approval the committee PAC.
That's correct.
So the PAC consists of all the high rankers, that is the authorities like in Mahavali Authority, Land Commission, and the Forestry. Likewise, all these the stakeholders, highest authorities, they are in the meeting. So that, or in the PAC. So that that is the idea. So that at that point they give the green light. Then we can issue the energy permit. So even now, that is the process we are going. But as you said, this is not a fully the one-stop the process, where what you have to do is you have to take the approval from the each and every agency. Then we put it to this PAC, the project approval committee, and they approved. After that, you can continue with the project. But the problem, when you look at frankly, the problem is even though when you look at the approving of the lands and other things, because each and individual department of the agencies, they have their own acts. So that the approval should be given based on those acts which are the responsibility of each and every government institute. For example, if it is a forestry land, so we cannot give the approval because the forestry should give the approval. So that type of a legal framework is there in the country. So that's why, as you correctly pointed out, sometimes they take some longer time to get those approvals. Even in the last few months, we were in the discussion to sort it out this problem. But at the moment, with the legal framework in the country, because we don't have the mandate to give the approval for those type of things, because they are allocated for different. For example, if it is a Mahavali, only the Mahavali authority can give the approval. So that
Doctor, can I add something here, Doctor? Now, what I actually meant was, now the problem lies at different agencies sitting in different 18 different places to give approvals. What I meant was, can't we get all these people into one location?
No. Lakman, can I add something, Lakman?
Sure.
Yeah, I think Lakmal, what we can do is, I think Dr. Asanka also has a point. What he says is that different agencies have different mandates in terms of approving. But what we practically feel is that the moment a government agency is actively involved in the follow-up process, the process becomes faster, and it's very hard to give them a lame excuse just to delay the project. I'll give you an example. All these solar projects have to go through a village approval process where people from the village, in cases like farmers, come to the discussion. In some cases, they ask that once we install the solar system, are we going to lose our rain? Ridiculous things like that. But these are genuine issues we have. I mean, in some cases, there are, I know that they said that, there's a possibility that the elephant might walk through this land. Therefore, we will complain to the forest. I mean, these issues are real issues where if we have a competent authority, they can educate. I'll give you a good example. If you look at the rooftop project, why it is successful is because Sustainable Energy Authority has competent officers to help us in mediating, negotiating these issues with the utility, because utility by nature is driven by a very highly skilled technical force. But a competent an authority like the Sustainable Energy Authority is they have this public relationship in a wider case compared to a highly sort of regulated, technical oriented organization. So I'm saying, I think SEEB is a very good organization. There's no doubt. But if we have another an authority which is more geared towards the public interaction, then this can be very easy. Obviously, if you look at the CEB, they are very helpful. Even if we want to change the land, they are very good. They give the concurrences very fast. But we need someone to pick up the phone and say, like in the rooftop case, can you help? There's a technical issue. There's a thing like this. Can you make a call? These things do not cost money, but all we need to form something like that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Yeah.
Thank you. I think
Just to add the Kushan's one, of course, we are, even for the small scale, like a medium scale projects, we are doing our best to get it done.
Yes.
And to add one more thing, when you look at the large scale project, this is the model what we are implementing. So that in the large scale project, even when you look at the Srilanka, Punarin and other projects, what we do is we take all the approvals, and then that will be a risk-free for the investor. The investor can come and invest and do the implementation, so that all the approval are taken by the Sustainable Energy Authority. Even the land acquisition, even the forestry, the Mahaveli or whatever approvals will be taken to the Sustainable Energy Authority. That's what we are the practicing at the moment for the large scale. But unfortunately, for the small scale projects, what the utility is doing is they are asking for the bidders to come with the lands, so that that process is not applicable for the small scale projects. But for the large scale, we do the same thing.
What is your benchmark on large and small, doctor?
That is obviously the 10 megawatts.
10 megawatts. Right.
The SPP and the PPA.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you. Let me move to Mr. Vimala Sen, ADB. Can you, Ransika, please unmute your microphone?
Yes, already did.
Right. Thank you. Right. Ransika, one very direct question. We have seen world over, the power sectors are moving away from fossil fuels, particularly the coal plants. Do ADB still fund coal plants and support coal?
It's a direct question and a direct answer also. We don't fund coal power. We used to fund coal power, but with our policy of 2009, we are not funding coal power plants throughout.
Thank you. What support can ADB give to energize the solar landscape in Sri Lanka, especially to have a rapid development within the next 5 years as we plan?
Thank you, Lakmal. I think before that, I should thank the organizers also. Let me take that opportunity to thank the organizers for organizing this webinar. Now, what we see in the context of Sri Lanka is I think Dr. Asanka also mentioned that we do not have any issue with the resources. There is abundance of resources. He mentioned solar as well as wind. And if you look at the technology is ever evolving. So there's no issue with the technology. It is becoming cheaper, and the technology becoming efficient. But if you really look at the couple of issues. One is we have always been talking about intermittence in the technical aspects, whether this renewable energy can be absorbed into a grid like Sri Lanka. But more than that, I would say the context of Sri Lanka, the issue was not the technical intermittency, but it was the policy intermittency. From 1 year to next year, we changed the policy. It was SPPA with a cost plus tariff, and then tendering without land being identified. But at least now we see there's some sort of consistency in the policy, that there's clear target that 80% should be achieved by 2030. So that's a clear policy direction we see, and a positive direction also. Then it comes to the financing side of it. We really don't see any issue in financing. If you speak to the solar association and the other renewable energy association, not only Sri Lanka but around the globe, especially in the South Asian region, there are enough investors, enough developers who wants to invest. But what ADB or World Bank or any multilateral organization can do is catalyze this investment. What we did with the wind power park plant in Mana is something similar. Of course, it was support to utility, but currently what World Bank and ADB is trying to see is how we can develop large-scale parks, especially for solar. Dr. Sanka mentioned Siamalandu, Punarin, and few other names. So that's where that someone like ADB or World Bank can come into the picture and then organize the whole thing and help with technical aspects as well as financial aspects, and minimizing the risk for the developer by the utility and the consumer gets the best out of it. The examples are the Cambodia solar park, which was to be 100 megawatt. First phase was 35, but we went to 60 megawatt, and the prices were about 3.7 US cents per kilowatt hour. So that's what we can do as the multilateral development agency.
And one more little question of the existing $50 million facility that we are enjoying right now. Now, at the beginning, there were certain restrictions that have been put in this into this ceiling capacity of the systems, which was 50 kilowatts. I think due to this reason, the deployment of this 50 million and together with certain other documentation that is required and not been lengthy documentation, I would say, it's still little over 50% that's been deployed. Having the back of my mind, I can remember this was about $300 million altogether, and we deployed only 50 million. Am I right, Mr. Mohsin?
Okay, let me explain. The request came for a larger contribution in the range of 300 million, but usually because of a experience we had in India, we initially thought we will start with a $50 million credit line, and based on the success of the project, we may be able to expand it. So that's how we started. We were to finish it last year, but it's dragging for obvious reasons, as you mentioned. But the hopes of expanding it is not yet over, provided that there's enough and more interest from the sector, there's more demand. We can still expand it to a larger amount, but it depends on the progress of this existing project.
That's good news.
Yeah, and the other one, I think other concern or the question you asked is about It has a limit of 50 kilowatt. Obviously, we did not intend to have a limit. The limit was 1 megawatt, but still it was not a limit. Beyond 1 megawatt, there was also a room for acceptance. But there was this small confusion in the Electricity Act. So because of that, there were legal issues from the government of Sri Lanka, which ministry was trying to sort out. But since the project is moving ahead with the 50 kilowatt limit, I don't know the progress about it, but that was unfortunate, I would say. But it could have been a much faster progress if we didn't have that limit.
You are spot on. I think, Mr. Mansena, what we can do as a supporting the Sri Lankan renewable energy sector, if we can possibly take this forward, the remaining capacity, whatever it may be, probably 250 million or whatever it is, the support that can come from the ADB side, to extend it to the large rooftops as well. We can make this rooftop capacity, very, very fastly deployed, and probably adding about another 500 megawatts with immediate effect, probably within the next within the next year, I would say, to that matter. If there's any possibility, please try to help us, help the country, trying to remove that, the removal of the barrier. I think Dr. Rodrigo, together with the ministry, Mrs. Srilanka Javadana, will be able to help to a greater degree. We can probably start a different discussion thread on the same lines, Dr. Asanka and Mrs. Srilanka Javadana, and try to address that so that this 80% will be greatly supported by at least for 500 other megawatts from the rooftops in a much faster way. Thank you very much, Mr. Imrasena.
Thank you very much, Lakmal. Unfortunately, I'll have to leave now. Sangeeta, if you may allow me to leave.
Thank you very much, all the panelists, for sharing your valuable insights. Now, moving ahead, we would be having a techno-commercial presentation by Mr. James, who is the sales head for India and Southeast Asia, Prithvi. Mr. James, over to you.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, open it. It's okay now, right, Sanjita?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, all my friends from Sri Lanka. So my name is James. I'm heading the business for Goodwill in India and Sri Lanka. And and many thanks to the excellent organization by Solar Quarter for this event. And so I hope all of you will enjoy this event. So let me get started. Goodwill product introduction. So some quick facts about the company. Established in 2010 with major focus on string inverter 700 watt up to 250. Then also we have this excellent energy storage product, which I will get to later. Then we have employees over 1,200, and out of which 200 from R&D. And also we have 70 overseas employees working across the globe and in the sales as well as the service team to support our customers in the overseas market. And we have 3 R&D centers in Suzhou as the headquarters, and also Shenzhen and also Australia. And the production capacity for today is 15 gigawatt. And we're talking about turnover. We have 120 million US dollar for 2017 and 150 million for 2018 and 160 million for 2019. And so we were ranked as the top 4 three-phase inverter supply to global market by IHS, and quite an honor. I would say that we were ranked as the #1 storage inverter supply to global market in 2019. So it's quite an achievement for us on the storage sector. And very uniquely, I would say that we've been the top 3 string inverter supplier to all these major markets for many years. Europe, Australia, and other markets. So it's not easy to achieve these kind of things because you can be there for 1 or 2 years, right? But for so many years, that's a good track record of your excellent product, company, and as well as service. And networks for service and sales spread across all the major markets, Germany, US, India, all these countries. We have not only the sales office, but also the service office. And these are the, our distinguished partners across the globe, and Wiseman, Bosch, Sterling Wilson, Tata Power, and Enel, all these companies. So Panasonic for the storage inverter, especially. And by working with all these big brands, so that actually helped us to build up all this comprehensive network, right, to support them. So that's quite important thing to these big clients. And this a great news for us again for this year. So we have this partnership built up for with GE. They authorize us to not only use their brand, but also their channels to sell GE inverters. And so in those markets that GE brand is particularly popular, then we will not be only selling Goodwill inverter, but as well as GE inverter. So we've been the #1 inverter supply from China since 2017 and to Sri Lanka, 17, 18, 19, you will see the figures. So we're strengthening our leadership there in Sri Lanka for the inverter supply by Chinese vendors. Yeah, come to the product part then. So just by the first look, right, of the product, then you will see the difference between Goodwill and the other suppliers. So just by the appearance, then let me get to the inside. Okay, here is the award we got from the international institutes or labs, like the Red Dot Design Award, that's for the product design, and TV Lab has given us the All Quality Matter Award, so for 4 years in a row. So that's a strong evidence of the product quality itself, because they pick from each vendor every year one model, then they do this very harsh testing, then they just pick the #1 to give this award. So we got this award for 4 years consecutively. Then next one, the VD lifespan certificate. So they did this harsh testing on your inverter, then it's officially certified that our inverter can survive for 10 years. And okay, so this is the product portfolio. So quite comprehensive range, starting from 700 watt to 10 kilowatt as the single phase, 3-phase starting from 4 kilowatt up to 250. And storage. So this product has set us a quite unique position in the global market. And so storage, you have single phase as well as 3-phase. Single phase, the ESEM, that's also the 3-phase ET. So that's the typical bidirectional hybrid inverter. And it can work like individually with the PV system to support your load. I mean, with grid connection or without grid connection, it will be working. Then apart from that, we have this retrofit type as well, like the SPP, BP. So retrofit means you have existing grid-tied system. So how to transform that into energy storage? They just put that device on, then you can take battery. So that can just turn that grid-tied system into battery supported storage system. So the next part is our solution for CNI and utility scale projects, the product range. So we have been supplying to the global market, the MT series, 50, 60, 80 kilowatt for many years, for Sri Lanka as well. So these three models, that's for rooftop. And also we are coming up with this 100, 120 kilowatt for rooftop as well. And 250 kilowatt inverter that with 1500 voltage DC. So that will be the next product we push to the market for the utility scale projects. Some key features to help you reduce your initial cost as well as reduce your O&M cost, also to enhance your system safety. So the built-in SPD on AC and DC side, and also the communication board, we have SPD integrated. So why we do this on communication board? Because we learned this actually from one project there in Cochin Airport, Kerala, India. So that's kind of a lighting area. So the thunder can travel through the communication cable to damage the communication board in the inverter. So this kind of protection will just prevent that from happening. Then anti-PID function integrated. So we have multiple AC cable saving solutions. You can choose to connect or not to connect the neutral cable, just depending on your requirements. You can save your cable cost as well. And it is supportive of the AC terminal is supportive of 240 square millimeter aluminum cable. And okay, dynamic power factor correction function integrated as well. Okay, so you can do the setting up of the inverter, right? Of the parameter of the inverter through the Bluetooth. Then talking about the transmission of data from inverter to the clouds, it has the Wi-Fi, LAN, and 4G. Okay, so this part is quite particular. It's a power line communication. We have this version 2 now. So this will just, enhance the efficiency and also stability of data transmission, as well as save you from the headache of installing the IS-485 cable. So it's quite popular now, especially for the big scale ground-mounted projects. So it's something key feature from good inverter. And IV curve diagnosis. So by now we are supporting the supporting the system with 3-level monitoring. So when you observing some strange generation of a system, so you want to find the problem position, then with our inverter it can help guide you to the particular stream immediately. After some time and very soon we're going to have this IV curve diagnosis, so that will help you to get to that particular module, solar module immediately instead of the stream, comparing to what is offering from the market. That's the MPPT level monitoring, so that can just help you to position the problem at the MPPT level. So it means you have to check all the 3 or 2 streams, right, instead of one string or one particular solar panel. So that's a matter of saving the time and energy for the O&M. And lower startup voltage, just to allow you to get more generation. Then, so our inverter will not derate at 50 degrees. So it's quite important for the hot areas. So we have the third-party certification for this. So it's something customer care a lot when they're doing these projects in some hot areas. And DC oversizing up to 50% and AC overloading up to 15%. And so this will allow you to do more overloading, right? Oversizing for the system. So that's something that's quite popular now on the private sector. Compatible with bifacial modules and also tracking system. And the AC connector has this temperature sensor embedded, so it can detect the temperature change So you can just shut down the inverter if there's some temperature, dangerous temperature rise, just to protect the system from fire. And ARC, failure protection. So when you have some loosening part, right, on the DC connector, so it's very dangerous, right? It will cause fire. So with this function there, it will just protect your system safety. And some more here, AC breaker, type 1 SPT, some optional features here. Humidity detection, so NTPID, just to help you understand, what kind of features we're offering to enhance the system safety. And okay, so some quick introduction of our storage and energy management system. So talking about storage products, so it is a UPS function, right? It's uninterrupted power supply. So this system can change from grid connection to off-grid mode within 10 milliseconds. So you will not feel the interruption. And so we have this fairness and design, so it's very quiet. Yeah, the ESA, so have everything integrated inside. So the inverter, the hybrid inverter itself, and also the AC breaker box, and as well as the battery bank. So again, UPS function, and also the battery bank can be expanded to meet your requirement of bigger capacity. The SEMS portal can support, like, with all this kind of power supply, power allocation, power allocation, this kind of thing. So let me get to the details. Yeah, here is an example of the household system, 5 kilowatt PV. So with 9.6 kilowatt hour battery. And so by calculation the load consumption, actually, so the SEMS portal, the cloud, can control the switching on and off of different loads at different times. The basic point is just to maximize the use of the PV power instead of using more power from the grid to save your electricity bill. This is for commercial use, 5 megawatt system, PV system. So the device is called BTC or ATC. Same philosophy as the household system. Yeah, some 9 solutions, right? Our SEMS portal management system is offering to do different controls, like EV cars and the smart home, and energy trading within the community. So why GUI? A very full product portfolio, very strong R&D, and the SEMS portal and data collection. Yeah, thank you. That will be all my presentation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Yeah.
Proceeding ahead with the panel discussion. The topic of discussion is going to be 2 gigawatts by 2030, continuing exponential growth of rooftop solar. We have speakers, Mr. Lakman Fernando, Secretary Solar Industries Association, who is going to be a moderator for the session. We have Mr. Supun Pereira, who is the Chief Manager, Project Finance, National Development Bank. We have Mr. Roshan Pereira, who is the CEO, Hales Solar. Mr. Padmanatha Podiwala, who is the CEO and Executive Director, Pan Asia Power, PLC. We have Mr. Herat Disankyane, MD, Wisdom Solar. Over to you, Mr. Lakman.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Hi, Supun. Can you, right, okay. Supun, can you please switch on your microphone?
Yeah, I have unmuted.
Right, thank you. Supun, I have a very, very direct question, again, the same way how, we have discussed with ABB. Now, we have seen over a period of 2-3 years, the solar ground-mounted system, the tenders, tariffs crashing down. Say, starting from 1860, which was 2 years ago, Now today, the tender that is closing on the 21st of July, we have a top level of 1560 to reverse bid. Now this is, do you think these tariffs that are coming out are bankable, and whether it will have capacity for financial institutions to support? What is your opinion on this?
Okay, thank you, Lakmal, first of all, and thank you for the organizers for organizing this webinar. In terms of tariffs coming down, Lakmal, what we have seen is, in terms of the evaluation criteria from a local bank's perspective, we do evaluate the project on the basis of the financial feasibility as well as the technical feasibility. So one key feature of the financial feasibility is the tariff. Tariff determines whether the project is financially feasible. The tariff also determines the project IRR. So the cost of debt reduced from the project IRR would be the equity returns to the investors. So definitely the tariff will have a direct impact on the financial feasibility of the project because most of the time the local banks doesn't have a credit line or concessionary funding line to offer, but we are very keen on the solar energy and the renewable energy financing. But saying that, of course, we don't have a concessionary funding line as well. So that results in evaluation of the financial feasibility of the project, and the tariff plays a very critical arm in that.
Yes. Now, in your experience, for a solar project to be viable, for it to be bankable, basically, in your past experience, what kind of a tariff has seen the real projects coming into life, and how many applications have been rejected by the banks due to non-availability of proper cash flow, probably negative cash flow over the 10 to 12 years, maybe?
Yeah, if you look at the two tenders which were out, the 90 megawatt and the 60 megawatts, the success rate, I would say, is still low because some of the projects carries a lower tariff. From a local bank's perspective, we don't reject a particular project because of a tariff, lower tariff. Of course, there are absurd, very low tariff which we even can't finance. But what happens is when the project carries a lower tariff, then in order for that project to be financially feasible, the promoter has to put in a bit more equity into the project so that the debt quantum will be coming down and the project will be financially feasible. And coming back to the original thing that I told, basically the project IRR would be the same irrespective of whether it's funded by the equity holder or the debt holder. So by putting more equity, there's a doubt whether the investor will be earning that particular return that they were originally intended for.
Basically, the equity IRR, when you say that you will have to bring in more equity, the equity IRR for low tariff projects are very, very low. That is why the projects are not moving forward with a higher level of equity. Is that correct, Sukun?
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay. Now, when you say low tariffs, what do you mean by low tariffs? Give me a number, please.
Of course, we have funded projects with tariffs above 14 rupees per kilowatt hour. That has been the experience in this tender. But anything below that, of course, we didn't reject. We always look at a cash flow forecast and the debt service cover ratio. So going by the numbers, we might ask the promoter to bring in more equity if required. So we can't put in a number, Akmal, as I mentioned. But of course, in my experience, we have funded projects starting from 14 rupees per kilowatt hour.
And what kind of a typical debt equity ratio the bankers would look at? I think this is going to be very informative to the forum here.
Yeah. In terms of the debt equity ratio, we will look at preferably 60-40, 60 being debt and 40 being the equity component. But going beyond that is always and almost possible, depending on the other parameters of the project. We have funded like 75-80% of debt as well. We also look at the financial feasibility of it, Lakmal. We also look at the technical feasibility, where the panel should be a tier 1 supplier, inverter should be of highest grade, and then if it's a ground mounted project, then the title of the land, the acceptability of the land, all these comes in when we talk about this debt to equity ratio.
Now, the ADB originally has been a development bank itself. Now, have you all taken any steps to, try and secure some low-cost lines in order to support this industry within the next 4.5 years, where we are anticipating extra potential growth in the industry? Do you have any plans to go for foreign credit lines that you can support this industry in a better, more pragmatic manner?
Yes, Lakmal. We have been for the last few years as well. We had few credit lines offered by the government of Sri Lanka till about last year, but they have also withdrawn subsequently. But our efforts in sourcing low-cost financing, especially from multinational financial institutes like GCF, the Green Climate Fund, Green Climate Partnership Fund, we have been constantly in touch with these parties to see how best we could source low-cost financing, which will eventually benefit the investors as well as the industry.
Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, still too early to tell, Lakmal, but we are hopeful.
Thank you. Let me move on to, we have very, very tight timelines. Let me move on to Roshan. Roshan, can you please? Right, thank you. Sri Lanka is having over 5 million rooftop spaces, scattered all around the country. Now, all these locations have become potential for solar rooftops and waiting our invasion.
Yeah.
But only 27,000 being converted as at 2019 December. What is your opinion on this slow growth in the market, and what do you propose to accelerate the rooftop solar PV growth?
Yeah. So in my opinion, since 2015 up to 2019, there was a steady growth in the market. And in 2019-20 compared to the 2018-19, there was a small dip in the market, mainly due to the certain uncertainties regarding the tariff and the scheme that was brought up. But again, now with the government policy changes, now we are back to normal. And again, unfortunately, this COVID came up which we expected to be a very short-term dip in the market. And at the same time, the funding, the ADB funding, actually, we've had many issues when it came to the documentations, which we are trying to, get the clarifications and to move forward. But obviously, that helped. And also, over the last few months, we have seen in the industrial sector, the low-interest loans that were made available is no longer available for the investors to go up, like Enterprise Sri Lanka, for example. So the reintroduction of low-interest loans, as well as I think now in Sri Lanka, most of the potential clients are very much educated, and it's a proven technology in Sri Lanka mostly. Over the last 5-6 years, there are some good, experiences to be shared with the new potential people. So the investment guarantee is there for the investor. But with the funding, better funding to be made available immediately, and also certain limitations that the CEB is bringing in, like capacity limitations, which Dr. Asanka mentioned. The hosting capacity may be at least for Colombo and suburbs for these large-scale warehouses and stuff, if they allow larger than the contract demand capacity to be incorporated. So these kind of things will, improve and again bring back the steady growth we've been having.
I think you addressed it very, very correctly, Roshan. Now, you came to a point where we have so many redundant roofs, that we can use as rooftop development, but due to the capacity restriction, we are unable to do that. So, opinion about how many megawatts of roofs can we convert if these warehouses and so various other large roofs that are available where there are no demand under the roof, but if we can get in the transformers and the necessary framework in and start pumping in, about what is your opinion of this number?
Because most of these we are talking about where usually have about a small 250 kilowatt sort of a transformer where they have over 1 megawatt potential of rooftop. And most of the time the hosting capacity is also available because these are in the industrial zones or in Colombo and suburbs where the limitation factors are very less compared to the outstation. Due to all this, I believe at least we have about 1,000 to 2,000 rooftops available with us, easily giving us
about 1 gigawatt.
Yes, gigawatt easily can be transferred.
That's a lot. I think we should take some serious look at these numbers and try to do something in order for us to reach this 2 gigawatts roof solar capacity in 2030, which will definitely be an energy injection for the entire industry and to the country to retain the so much needed foreign currency within the country by way of minimizing the fossil fuel expenses. Am I right?
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me move on to Mr. Podivela. Can you please switch on your microphone?
Yeah, done.
Thank you. Now, this 80 by 30, it's rhyming very nicely. 80 by 30 target is an uphill task. Now, we are looking at 2 gigawatts of rooftops and combination of another 3 gigawatts from ground-mounted and floating solar. As an expert who is involved in both ground-mounted and solar systems, Mr. Podivela, do you think this is a too optimistic target or this can be reached?
Thank you all for the question, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for the organizer for giving this opportunity to join with the experts team. To take up your question, Lakmal, so let me link this with one statement made by Sulakshan. He categorically said that we have a huge potential. There's no issue with the potential. The concern was the land, right? But if we really look at in large scale solar, wherever the world, we have 3 segments, like mainly rooftops, then ground mounted, where you will be utilizing land, and the other version is the water surfaces, reservoirs. So keep the lands aside for a moment. Assume we have Sri Lanka about 5 to 5.5 million household roofs. So if you just harness 20% of this roof, you get 1 million rooftops. Just imagine, even a poorest people in the Sri Lanka, you could simply put 3 kilowatt system on their roof. So because our electrification is at a very high standard, a very high number, even a small family could afford for a 3 kilowatt system, where you could easily reach about 3 gigawatt. So we are talking about just 1% area of our reservoirs, which could add another 2 to 3 gigawatts. So I think even before we utilizing these cultivatable lands, we would have simply moved into harnessing these other resources because the roofs are abundant. Just 3 kilowatt is a smaller capacity. Imagine even a small house can go for 3 kilowatt. So what about there are roofs even which you can reach 1 megawatt? So the target is it's something very easy, but only thing is we need certain policy level changes. But meantime, we observe, we experience a lot of positive changes also with the time, and still we need certain areas to be further relaxed. Like as Roshan mentioned, there are a lot of warehouses, even the Colombo suburbs, you get a lot of warehouses, but there are certain legal regulatory barriers which you couldn't utilize these abundant spaces. So this is the best case we could think of, best utilizing our resources.
Thank you. I think you addressed that question very well, Ms. Podivela, because we are looking at 5 gigawatts by 2030. And Mr. Sopun Pereira from NDB, he very clearly said that they are looking at low cost funding lines to support this 80% renewable strategy, not only solar, but there are other aspects, like wind and mini hydro that they are looking at. So doing minor changes to the barriers that we have, removing these minor barriers that we have in the system, it's going to be very easy for us to get this 3 gigawatts of rooftops converted within the next 5 years. So I think it's a very good point for us to look at. If Mr. Jayawardene is there, and I think Dr. Asankar left the meeting earlier. So that's another discussion thread that we will have to start and continue in order to achieve this 5 gigawatts by 2030. Thank you very much, Mr. Podivela. Can I speak with Mr. Disanak? Mr. Disanak, can you please unmute your microphone? Kushan, can you please mute your right? Thank you. Mr. Disanak, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
As an expert and pioneer in the industry with over 35 years of experience,
not 35.
You are one of the most experienced gentlemen that we can discuss about solar. I had a brief discussion with you this morning about what am I going to be speaking, and this rural electrification. Now, this platform, we are still seeing, according to you, over 50,000 households that does not have grid connectivity due to various reasons. Probably the grid is not available. Probably, as you said, the ownership cannot be proven, or maybe various other factors that the users are faced with. Due to this, we are having a kerosene subsidy. Now, kerosene subsidy is a huge impact for our capital account. So, what is your opinion in resolving this issue and connecting them with a reasonably accepted solution to help supporting Sri Lankan economy, Mr. Disanak?
Thank you, Lakmal. Thank you for organizers of this event. The question is asking off-grid. Actually, this the people who are not reaching the grid as at now due to various issues. Most of the houses are they can reach the main grid, but they cannot get connection due to different issues, like they have legal issues. Sometimes they are not owners of the land, that kind of thing. And also there are so many houses still there are no grid access. RERED project was started in 2001. That time there was 800,000 houses are unelectrified in the country. After that, the President Mahinda Rajapaksa came and he introduced Samata Elia or something, some program, and he reached up to 98%. That is what CB is telling. They are already completed. 98% of the houses are connected to the grid. But still today data, there are more than 50,000 houses are unelectrified due to the various reasons, like I told you. Now, as Lakmal mentioned, this kerosene oil subsidy, actually the kerosene oil using only 50,000 in the country, let's say maximum. But kerosene subsidy is using other purposes also, because the subsidy is already implemented to the kerosene. Actually, this is unnecessary subsidy government is bearing. Actually, we can offer them an off-grid system to for all these unelectrified houses. With the now technology is very improved, not like in 2000. before 2010. Now it is the off-grid inverters, new inverters are introduced, and battery bank is new battery banks are came. And if government can subsidize for these houses, at least 50% subsidized, then people will get this off-grid system, and also government can abandon this kerosene oil subsidy. They can cancel it. That is what my opinion. And there are potential for the solar of more than 50,000 customers are there. There are solar market also will grow, and also this kerosene subsidy also problem will solve, and also it's environmental and economically very profitable.
Mr. Isanaka, also it's a social issue. Don't you have, I believe you have seen the number of deaths related to kerosene oil lamps being, have fallen, and various other fire-related hazards that have taken place. So it's a social issue as well as a commercial issue that, what you propose the solution. So that's another area, probably this committee together with the Ministry of Power and Energy and the SCA can look at providing solutions. But we have to be certain about the numbers. So do you have any idea, Mr. Isanaka, what kind of a forex outflow that we are having by way of kerosene subsidy for electricity? Other than, because I know for a fact that some of the volumes that are being used in kerosene are used for fisheries industry as well. Do you have any idea what kind of a volume, the financial support that we have on this kerosene subsidy? Mr. Disanayake, are you still there?
Sir, I believe we have lost him due to some connectivity errors. So you can proceed ahead with the next panelist.
Sure. Right. No, I think we are pretty much covered everyone, and I would like to. In fact, we have.
I believe he's back, sir.
Yes. All right. Okay. Mr. Disanayake, I was asking.
Sorry, can I?
Kushan, we can wait for the Q&A, please. Mr. Isanayake,
okay.
Mr. Isanayake, can you please unmute your microphone? Yeah. Do you have any idea? Now you came out with a very, very good proposition on this off-grid systems. Do you have any idea what kind of subsidy, the value of the subsidy that we are paying for kerosene oil? Because I do understand that this kerosene oil being used for various other purposes such as fisheries industry. I'm sure you have somewhat kind of an idea what kind of a subsidy that we are spending particularly on electricity.
Yeah, now subsidy is kerosene oil. I think it is normally almost 50% subsidized by the government for the kerosene oil, and they are like you, Lakmal said, the people who are using fisheries industries and other industries also they are enjoying this subsidy of the kerosene oil. And but this, if the government or CEB can subsidize this 50,000 houses to give the DC backup system, off-grid system, actually they can use only maybe 20% of the subsidy amount. They can cover up this 50,000 giving by 50% subsidize.
So you'll have to unmute yourself. We are not able to hear you.
We have covered all the speakers and the presenters we have scheduled for the day. Let me summarize what we have discussed and the action plan, probably what we need to move forward with.
Sir, just a minute before you summarize and go ahead. We have Mr. Mohit Shrimal from Longi and we have Mr. James from Goodwe. So you can go ahead addressing few questions to them.
Hi, James.
Hi, hello, sir. How are you? It's good to see you again.
I'm very well. How are you?
They were anyway ruling the country, so they wanted simpler.
Yes. Sangeeta, you said that the questions.
You can go ahead addressing few questions.
Okay, I was thinking about summarizing the session highlights. I would like to start up with Mr. Javadana's points. So basically, the 80% renewable energy policy is accepted by the Power and Energy Ministry, and the committee being set up to give their proposals, and they will most likely do it within the next 3 months maximum, and hopefully they will come out with it even before that. And also the methodology, Mr. Javadana said that the methodology of the renewable energy absorption, they are looking at giving more positive sentiments to this aspect. And when it comes to Dr. Asanga Rodrigo, Dr. Asanga very clearly established that there is enough resources for all 4 sectors what we are looking at, not 4 sectors, in 3 sectors, wind, hydro, solar, and he particularly mentioned about having limitations on biomass, but I think for that also we are having some solutions coming up. And the resources, of course, the land capacities, water resource capacities, and everything having adequate capacity. So there is no problem. We don't have to discuss this kind of limitations in the future. The only limitation what he mentioned was the grid expansion and the distribution expansion. So I believe that again, the rooftop solar, to a greater degree, the rooftop solar, these expansions are, these problems are going to be very limited. And Mr. Jayasuriya pointed out various problems that the industry is facing when it comes to approvals, and we proposed one-stop shop mechanism to be deployed if possible. So Dr. Asanga agreed to look at it in the ministry level as well as at the SDA level and come out with a solution on that. And of course, Mr. Vimala Sena from ADB and Mr. Supun Pereira from NDB, they both said that they are looking at future possible low-interest credit lines to finance the solar industry, where we are targeting 5 gigawatts of solar in the grid by 2030. This is a very short period for a small country like Sri Lanka to get 5 gigawatts, but we are very optimistic, and the entire forum and everyone involved in the industry are very, very positive about it. And Mr. Roshan Pereira and Mr. Apodivela both confirmed the capacities that we have to confirm our expertise that we have on getting these ground-mounted rooftops as well as the floating solar systems up and running and finalizing the 5 gigawatts of power. And Mr. Disanayake finally added value to the forum by bringing in the systems that we are having a lot of problems in terms of forex drainage of some kerosene subsidy. So those are that's the summary of the discussion today. And now I believe Sangeeta wanted me to take the Q&As from 2 companies, that is particularly from James and Mohit.
Yes,
let me start with James first. James, over to you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm here. Sangeeta, you have some question, right?
Sir, I would request Mr. Lakmal to please take it forward.
I can do it. So thank you, Mr. Fernando. I think it was a very nice that you summarized every panelist view. And first of all, from both mine and James' side, we would like to say that Sri Lanka has an ambitious program. Both of us, Longi and Goodvi, are very reliable partners. So I would place a question to James by saying that James, now that it's very clear that Sri Lanka is on a path to achieve 80% renewable energy through various sources, as an inverter manufacturer, what experience can you share? I mean, India and China and many other countries in the region have gone through the small problems that come in when you are installing large capacity of rooftop solar or floating solar to the grid, especially to discoms. So what as an inverter manufacturer, how can Goodvi inverters make it easier for a lot of rooftop coming together into the grid?
Yeah, Mohin, thank you. That's a very good question, actually. So we've been experiencing this kind of problems from the different countries for sure, and also for some specific project, right? Customer, their requirement, technical requirement, we can see they're actually into this direction. So yeah, and when we design the inverter, I mean, comparing to the previous stage, now we care more about like being friendly to the grid. So a lot of functions actually coming up with this kind of direction. So actually you haven't seen, right? We've been like developing the high rating inverter. So that would just kind of to make it less complex and make the complexity, right? Like not that much compared to using many units of small inverters. And also that will help to like control the HDI, all these kind of problems that the grid company, they would care a lot about. And so also the communication method you're applying, and so definitely because for most of the projects, it's kind of on the flat roof, flat area, we will see. So the application won't be that complex, but for very few projects that we will use this very complex application, then you have to do that. I mean, some particular design to make it safer for the grid stability. This kind of thing. So I would want to share with you.
Thank you, James.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mohit, I have a quick question for you here. Is solar panel efficiency dependent upon ambient humidity?
Of course, ambient humidity does play a factor, but you see, over the period of time, solar panels have also become resilient to such things. So, Longi, we are like I think my colleague mentioned in the presentation before, we are one of the highest spenders on R&D. So, so there are some losses like LID losses, LETDI losses, and Longi is continuously, upgrading our technology to make sure that these losses are minimized. In terms of efficiency, monocrystalline panels are the most efficient. Like we have recently changed our dopant to gallium to reduce these effects. So of course, these things play a factor, but it's very minuscule. It doesn't make a big difference.
Thank you. Okay, one more quick question to both of you. Anyone can answer. What is the scope of hybrids plus storage?
I think I'll take it. I think in a country like Sri Lanka, storage is still very expensive for both country like India and Sri Lanka. Storage is still a bit too expensive. Recently, we have seen in India, sir, a round the clock power tender, which was about 3.5 rupees Indian rupees. But storage is still expensive for us. For us, the need right now is to ensure reliable power to all our people first, and reliable clean power to all our people first. I think storage should be used in more mature economies first, like Europe and America, they are using it. they should build their capacity so much so that mass production brings the cost down further for us. So I think China again, and China, America, and Europe again have to take the lead on something like this to make the capacity so huge that the cost of energy for storage is lower. I think Sri Lanka has a good hydel system in the country already. So there is ways to manage power, and you don't need storage. So yes. So for a hybrid system, right, Sri Lanka has very good wind potential combined with rooftop in the morning, wind in the evening. It is manageable. So what I mean, I'm not even as experienced, but what I would suggest is one should take the learnings from countries which have already installed these systems, and then how to indigenize it for Sri Lanka's own need, and we don't have to go for expensive ways. Storage sounds fancy, but after all, the power should be at a price which is affordable, for people to use it for the country to grow.
In many occasions, our utility has accepted that up to 20% of solar energy, the total requirement, up to 20% of energy can be absorbed without
any storage.
Battery storage.
Yes.
So that's been admitted, but it's not been put into practice yet. So we are getting the support from the Ministry of Power and Energy as well as SCA to establish this. And as you said very correctly, with the big time usage of battery storage will bring this price down. So we are hopeful by the time we are ready to go for the next stage in 2025, the battery prices will be lower, and probably even 2023 battery prices are going to be lower. And as a result, that we'll be able to bring in that, the additional energy that we need to balance the grid by way of battery.
Yes, correct.
Yes, can I add something, please? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, yeah. Talking about storage application, I would say the majorly there are two scenarios. So as we can see from nowadays, so one is for backup purpose, right? When the grid is not stable, so you use the hybrid storage system just to as the backup of the power supply. Then another scenario, when the grid power, the electricity price is very high, so you need to find a way, right, to save the electricity bill. So by using this storage system combined by PV, so you can just, during the daytime, right, the PV generation can be stored into the battery, then you can use the battery power, right, during evening time, so that's the peak hours. So in some countries, they have the price difference, right, for the peak hours and the off-peak hours. So using more power, PV power from the battery in peak hours, so that will save you a lot on the electricity bill. So that's the two major applications about the residential, mostly residential hybrid system we've been seeing in the past years, especially in Australia. That's a very typical country for using the residential hybrid inverters. Yeah, so talking about like Thailand, right? They have some high requirement for the storage system. So they want to just, because in each country, right, you have some standard for the infrastructure, electricity infrastructure. That can up to some capacity, this standard of infrastructure can support. But beyond this capacity, you need some high standard of infrastructure. Then the investment will be huge. So like Thailand, they're seeking some solution with the energy storage that can save them, can help them, right? And not to upgrade their infrastructure standard, with that much investment. So these kind of things are coming up from some countries also. Yeah, that's something I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this, we would like to conclude the webinar. I would like, on behalf of Solar Quarter, I would like to thank all the government bodies. So without your support, this webinar wasn't possible. Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy, Solar Industries Association for your continued support, especially Mr. Lakman for being the moderator for both the sessions. Our esteemed speakers, our sponsors, LANKA and Goodby, thank you very much. All the participants for joining us for today's webinar. I would now hand over to Mr. Lakman for closing remarks.
I think I have summarized the session already. So I would like to thank Solar Quarter for organizing this very timely webinar. and also Longi, and of course our good friend James for sponsoring the event. We have been having a lot of discussions with Longi, also Mohit, directly with the company for a long time. So both companies are not strangers to us. And all the participants who gave us very valuable inputs in this webinar. And we are hopeful that we will be able to take it to the next level by way of implementing some of the things what we have discussed here in a more productive and pragmatic and user-friendly manner, where the 2030 80% renewable target becomes a reality. Thank you very much, everyone, for your valuable time that you have spent with us. It's over 2.5 hours, one of the longest webinars that we have participated. Thank you once again. Thank you, Sangeeta.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With this positive note, we would be ending the webinar. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all
Bye.
speakers.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.